Hey comrades, thanks for tuning in to this Communist Renewal session. Lenny here, and I'm joined by Criss.
Hey.
And Alex.
Hi.
Maybe this evening or this afternoon we can just reflect a little bit on the recent things like Strike for Climate Change run by lots of students, the Extinction Rebellion as an international, and as I said to someone today, it's the end of the Bling Rebellion and it's moving on to the Extinction Rebellion. And meaning that up just the group, so let's say mid-20s to early 30s, is a lot of options have disappeared in terms of the big investments in life, such as the house and even an expensive car. So the 20-somethings of the last few years have revolted against this in the way of, well, we can't afford a home or a house, we can't even necessarily buy a big car, we can do something distinctive with our lifestyle, and maybe that also helps explain the fashionableness of identity politics in the last few years, where it's become important that you can go night clubbing, you can possibly even go for a trip overseas. Australia, with a lot of families of migrants, is the younger generation might be first generation migrants, so they can go back and see their home countries. Others, of course, when you look, you see backpackers coming to Australia. So, and the other thing is you can do it by your distinctive lifestyle by which identifies you. So it's sort of, in a sense, a bling revolution over the last 10 or so years. But what we're seeing now, and I think things like the International Panel on Climate Change's report late last year has been an important accelerator of this, is that that is not sufficient. People are saying, well, it's not even the matter of we can't have much leverage on the important things in life, but at least we've got our bling, was we're not even going to have our bling the way things are going anytime soon.
Yeah.
So it's moved to a next stage of response to an evolving and rapidly evolving crisis in the whole global capitalist system, which is people realise in a very fundamental way this system cannot even guarantee a miserable life. It cannot even guarantee life, which is the most breaking of the most basic social contract in any society. Is you can't say if you behave, if you conform, if you keep your thoughts to yourself, the system will at least protect your actual existence. So what is happening here is people are realising this system is not giving any rewards for not revolting against it. In actual fact, revolt is the only way to have a chance of surviving in this system. And when you think of the IPCC's recommendation was that the problems are broadly systemic, or they called it political, but technically, even now at this late stage, we could do something to curtail, hopefully, the worst possibilities. We could have a chance over the next generation or two generations of reining in the problem of what they talk about is global warming, but the whole broad scale impact of humanity organised in this form of global society, what impact that is having not only on most of humanity directly, given the aggregation of wealth at one end and the increasing poverty at the other, but of the fact that in every way our impact of human society, a society based on exploitation, on the larger planet or ecosphere in which we sit and carry out our human activity, has actually been endangered in a way that must have incredible social dislocation in store. And you don't have to die from you don't have to have a globalised extinction event to wipe us out. You just imagine if our physical global economy is dislocated, if we are having food crop failures, if energy systems and transport systems are collapsing through any aspect of an economic and crisis, is that a lot of us are going to be caught in very vulnerable situations. The crisis of capitalism at the moment is accelerating. It's got three aspects, which is the aspect of the environmental catastrophe that is in store for us if something's not done, as well as a generalised economic crisis that could happen at any time, at the extent of the dislocation of, say, a Great Depression, something larger than a global financial crisis. And of course, underlying all those tensions and contradictions is a march to war, which is another. A global nuclear war is another surefire way that there's going to be massive extinction.
So, in terms of Extinction Rebellion, that group starting up overseas and seeing them do such protests and starting, some sort of flare of change. Is there any of that happening in Sydney? Is there any remnants of that?
Or in Australia? There are some, but I'd say, first of all, Extinction Rebellion represents a point, a threshold, where it's been recognised by some people and a growing number of people that it's the whole system that has to be challenged. It's not just stopping an Adani coal mine or addressing a rainforest or a crisis, a Great Barrier Reef. It's that if all these are components or aspects of a global crisis of facing extinction that in totality adds up to that. So in a sense, we've reached a threshold in terms of revolt or rebellion. The situation of a rebellion as the first word is the notion of a widespread revolt, which is what we are getting where you see this growth of lots of other groups, not called Extinction Rebellion, but lots of other groups are coming up and becoming more militant in their action. Hence, the convoy heading towards the Adani mine locality, the Galilee Basin in North Australia. The Extinction Rebellion, in a sense, is a virtual organisation. It's an idea or a concept put up around which people should be organising themselves and mobilising themselves. And thinking about having some experience, having attended some of their meetings and things like this, is we have people that are already involved in lots of activities, so much that would they then drop those activities to join a group called Extinction Rebellion? I don't think so. On the other hand, there are people that have not been involved in other activities, and they may gravitate to an Extinction Rebellion. I see that we've had some events, but not great or major events such as have occurred in the UK in particular. Yeah,
so nothing big happening here. And you've said
it's emerging, I think, is what we should say. And there have been a number of small events. There are people meeting, and there's planning for other events.
So their meetings so far have been quite small, but it is slowly growing and it's slowly appearing. What are the protests like, based on what you've seen?
Well, the only one I can think of in particular was there's an earlier one. There was a die-in, so they're event stage for social media, but that in itself was done here in Sydney on Monday the 15th, last Monday, because Extinction Rebellion, as emanating from the UK, and there's a Global Extinction Rebellion site, was calling for a week of climate action around the world. So what is important about that is that idea of there's a global problem and there's a global response, and it's in an early stage. It can only grow. But I think with the merit of Extinction Rebellion will be a core group or groups that are saying, let's organise an event that taps into So I would see what will happen is people are still fighting an Adani mine or
Yeah.
for the Barrier Reef or for what's gone on in the Darling River, but they'll say, oh yes, and there's an Extinction Rebellion event coming on this week. Let's
Yeah.
swell those numbers. If it's not like that, it'll be more like small groups of people doing things called Extinction Rebellion.
How do you see communists getting involved with this?
I think that communists should already be aware of the integral part of the catastrophe emerging in terms of the environment, which is the relationship between nature and society, and it's also scalar of a society that exploits and brutalises and murders within human society, one class against another, also as a whole also exploits, brutalises and ultimately is destroying nature. So we should already have that understanding. We should also, in a sense, have an historic understanding and realise that what is going on now especially is the current contradictions at its greatest height of the system. What we should be able to do is to give spontaneous revolt against the impending extinction this system is inflicting on humanity, some focus, some analysis, some understanding of the trends, of the dynamic, and come up with some of the solutions. So, for instance, we'd see that there are three main areas to move in at this stage, which is we have to build the unity of the people worldwide. That's a call like what the Extinction Rebellion has put out. We have to also target the most reactionary elements of capital. At the moment, which is good, the Extinction Rebellion talks about the banks and the finance companies, and there was something like that in London over the weekend. But obviously, when you look at things like the coal industry and those who drive that industry, they must be targeted. You're seeing that as an Adani. But even more important, I don't know whether people realise the global arms expenditure is sufficient. The US arm expenditure, which is half the world's arms expenditure, if that were reduced by 50%, it would still be by far the world's biggest forces. But 6 years of US defence or arms expenditure, $3 trillion, is basically what the outlay would be to, over the next 30 years, to make us a completely renewable energy-based economy. So there are these things that we've got to make choices. As our labour and our social powers going into the forces of destruction, and the United States Defence Forces are one of the largest consumers of.
It seems to be, it is going into destruction. I wanted to ask Alex if she has seen anything of Extinction Rebellion, been familiar with it, or like.
They are organising here in New South Wales and presumably in other localities around Australia. It's very decentralised, so you could just start up a group on your own and do it. It sort of originates in the UK as a response to fracking and airport, what have you. But it's not. It's a very decentralised sort of organisation. So just go ahead and do it.
Based on a meeting attended by Valen, he went to the Extinction Rebellion's meeting and it seemed very disorganised. Barely anyone showed up there, which is based on that, I thought it's not really going anywhere here. But based on what Lenny has seen and been involved in, it seems to be going somewhere. It's just starting up. That's the problem.
It's just starting up.
It's
and
just
also,
at the beginning.
If it's a lack of leadership, step in and make it possible.
I think this is a bit like the. This may be only a temporary phenomenon, something called Extinction Rebellion, basically as a global Facebook phenomenon. It may not sort of reach Earth and Earth itself and grow this time, but all that means is that it makes it the first expression of let's organise globally against the class that's causing it globally.
Yeah.
And that is important. And if this is one wave or just one pulse of that, that is a part of a growing phenomenon. There's no other choice for humanity when you think about it other than to overthrow this system. That's what communists say. It's not about getting reforms and concessions out of this system. This system is intrinsically exploitive and destructive, and it must be overthrown. So why we are involved with these sorts of things are because that truth has to be clarified. The more quickly it's clarified in this emerging movement, the more it will have progress. But the other thing is, if you turn around and say, righto, we're declaring war on the system, the whole system, either you are not treated seriously, but if you start to be effective in such a way that you need to be treated seriously by the masters of the world, those who rule this system and exploit it and destroy it, we should be aware of the nature of the opponent we've thrown the gauntlet down to. This system's not destroying the planet and not giving a care about that because it has any mercy, compassion for the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And if protests get in its way and they start to be effective, it will be ruthless in its suppression of that thing. So I think a lot of people coming into this, having declared war on the whole system, are not really aware of what they are doing.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But I think that was a good discussion.
Righto. Thanks for watching, comrades. If you enjoy kicking ass for the working class, then consider sharing our work and subscribing. All the best. See you on the barricades.